Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. It floated in the heart of Nexus Prime, a station world that had served as the center of galactic civilization for 12,000 years. The chamber itself could hold representatives from over 1,000 species, and today 847 of those seats were filled. Light streamed through crystalline walls that showed the endless stars beyond. The air carried a dozen different atmospheric mixtures, separated by invisible energy barriers that kept each delegation comfortable. The Vorthak breathed their thick methane. The Selenari enjoyed their thin nitrogen. The Meridian, oldest of all known species, sat in perfect stillness within their chambers of pure oxygen. It was a Tuesday by Earth's calendar, a routine session. Nothing important was scheduled. Ambassador Elena Vance of Earth sat in the human section, a small corner of the chamber that had been assigned to her species 30 years ago, when they were first admitted to the council. The seats around her were mostly empty. Humanity had never sent more than a handful of representatives. They had learned early that their presence was tolerated but not welcomed. Elena was 53 years old. Her hair had gone gray at the temples, and her eyes carried the weight of 3 decades spent fighting for a seat at a table where no one wanted her. She had submitted 4,000 petitions during her career, requests for fair trade agreements, appeals for military protection of human colonies, proposals for scientific cooperation. Of those 4,000 petitions, exactly 12 had received any response at all. None had been approved. Today, she would submit her last petition. She pressed the button that requested speaking time. The council's automated system registered her request and placed her at the end of the queue, behind 7 other speakers. This was normal. Humans were always placed last. 3 hours passed. The Vorthak delegate spoke about mining rights in the outer systems. The Selenari representative complained about shipping lane taxes. A small species, called the Thesan, requested emergency food aid for one of their colony worlds. The council approved it within minutes. Elena remembered when humanity had made a similar request during the Threshold Crisis. That petition had been denied. Finally, her name was called. Elena stood and walked to the central platform. She was a small figure in that vast chamber, surrounded by beings that towered over her, creatures of crystal and shadow and living flame. She had never felt smaller than she did in this moment, and she had never felt more certain. "Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Council," she began. Her voice was calm and steady. "I come before you today not to make a request. I come to deliver a statement." A ripple of mild interest passed through the chamber. Humans rarely spoke, and when they did, they usually begged for something. A statement was unusual. Elena pulled out a small datapad and began to read. 30 years ago, humanity was granted membership in the Galactic Council. We were told that this membership would bring us into the family of civilized species. We were promised protection, trade, cooperation, and respect. We accepted these promises in good faith. We believed them. She paused and looked around the chamber. Most of the delegates were not paying attention. The Vorthak ambassador was checking his communication device. The Selenari representative appeared to be sleeping. "Today, on behalf of the United Earth Coalition and all human territories, I am formally announcing our withdrawal from the Galactic Council." The chamber went silent. Elena continued reading. "This withdrawal is effective immediately. All treaties between humanity and Council species are hereby dissolved. All human personnel will vacate Council space within 60 standard days. We respectfully request that all Council species remove their citizens from Earth and its colony worlds within the same period." She lowered the datapad. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Vorthak ambassador began to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the chamber. Other delegates joined in. The Selenari representative had woken up and was making a gesture that Elena recognized as their equivalent of dismissive amusement. "Is this a joke?" the Vorthak asked. His name was Krath, and he had spent 20 years blocking every human petition that crossed his desk. "Have the little apes finally lost their minds?" "This is not a joke," Elena replied. "Then it is a tantrum," Krath said. "What is it this time? Are you upset about trade tariffs? Do you want better seats in the chamber? Go back to your corner, little human. When you are ready to apologize for wasting our time, we might listen." More laughter filled the chamber. Elena did not react. She had expected this. She reached into her bag and pulled out a second data pad, much thicker than the first. This document contains 400 years of recorded history between humanity and the species of this council. It includes every broken promise, every ignored petition, every treaty violation, every instance where human lives were sacrificed because we were deemed unimportant. She placed the data pad on the central podium. "The colony of Threshold 7, she said quietly. "Does anyone here remember it?" Silence. 12,000 human beings lived there. Men, women, children, farmers and teachers and doctors. When the Crick swarm attacked, they sent a distress signal to the council. They begged for help. The council voted that Threshold 7 was outside the priority protection zone. No ships were sent. Everyone died. She looked at Krath. "That was your vote, Ambassador. You said that human colonies were not worth the fuel cost of a rescue mission." Krath's laughter had stopped. His massive face was unreadable. "The research station at Kepler's Rest," Elena continued. "Human scientists developed a cure for the Thessan plague. The council classified their research and gave credit to a Selenari laboratory. The humans who did the actual work were not mentioned. 3 of them died in that station, working without proper equipment because their funding requests were denied." The Thessan delegate shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "The shipping lanes of the outer reach. Human freighters taxed at 3 times the standard rate. Human merchants denied docking rights at major stations. Human traders forced to use dangerous routes because the safe paths were reserved for priority species." She picked up the datapad again. 400 years of this. 400 years of being told we were part of a family while being treated as servants. 400 years of watching our people die while the council looked the other way. "We are done." Elena stepped back from the podium. "You will find that humanity's departure is permanent. We will not negotiate. We will not reconsider. We will not return. This council had 30 years to treat us as equals. That offer has expired." She began walking toward the exit. The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted questions and objections. Several species began arguing with each other. The Vorthak ambassador was demanding that humans be punished for this insult. The Selenari representative was calling for economic sanctions. Through it all, one figure remained still. High Arbiter Solon of the Meridian was the oldest living being in the chamber. His species had helped found the council 12,000 years ago, and he had personally served for the last 2,000 of those years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched species ascend to greatness and crumble to dust. He understood patterns that others could not perceive, and he was afraid. In 12,000 years of council history, no species had ever voluntarily withdrawn. Conquered species had been absorbed. Failed species had collapsed. Rebellious species had been crushed. But voluntary departure? It had never happened. The council was the center of galactic civilization. Leaving it was unthinkable. Yet the humans were leaving. And they were not angry. They were not desperate. They were calm, prepared, certain. Solon had lived long enough to know what that meant. He remembered a saying from human culture, something he had read in their historical archives. "Beware the fury of a patient man." The humans had been patient for 30 years. They had endured insult after insult. They had submitted petition after petition. They had played by the council's rules even when those rules were designed to keep them powerless. And now they were done playing. Solon watched Elena Vance walk out of the chamber. She did not look back. She did not hesitate. She walked like someone who had already accepted the consequences of her actions and found them acceptable. The other delegates were still arguing. They were talking about punishment and sanctions and teaching the humans a lesson. They did not understand what had just happened. But Solon understood. The humans were not throwing a tantrum. They were not bluffing. They were not making a dramatic gesture to gain leverage in negotiations. They were leaving because they no longer needed the council. And if they no longer needed the council, it meant they had spent the last 30 years building something else. Something the council knew nothing about. Something that made them confident enough to walk away from the most powerful alliance in galactic history. Solon rose from his seat. His ancient body moved slowly, but his mind was racing. He needed to speak with his intelligence services. He needed to know what the humans had been doing while everyone else ignored them. Because in 12,000 years, Solon had learned one truth that never changed. The most dangerous species were not the ones who screamed and threatened and demanded attention. The most dangerous species were the ones who worked quietly in the shadows, building and learning and preparing, while everyone else assumed they were unimportant. The humans had been quiet for 30 years. Solon was very afraid of what they might have built in that silence. The session continued for another 3 hours, but nothing was accomplished. The delegates argued and blamed each other and proposed various responses to the human departure. In the end, they voted to send a diplomatic mission to Earth in 3 months, after the humans had calmed down. They assumed the humans would be waiting. They assumed wrong. 3 months had passed since the humans walked out of the Grand Chamber. The Galactic Council had expected chaos. They had expected the humans to struggle without Council support. They had expected desperate calls for help, pleas for reconsideration, perhaps even an apology. Instead, they got silence. The humans did exactly what they had promised. Every human trader, engineer, doctor, scientist, and worker quietly packed their belongings and left council space. Human freighters completed their final deliveries and then vanished into the dark between stars. Human technicians finished their current maintenance contracts and then departed without seeking new ones. Human doctors treated their last patients and then closed their clinics. It was orderly, professional, complete, and it was devastating. The first problems appeared within weeks. On the agricultural world of Thesson Prime, the harvesting machines began to fail. Engineers examined them and discovered that 40% of the internal components had been designed by a small human company called Sing Agricultural Solutions. Replacement parts were not available. The company had closed its offices in council space and returned to Earth. The Thesson government contacted Earth requesting emergency supplies. They received a polite response thanking them for their message and wishing them well in finding alternative solutions. No parts were offered. No assistance was provided. Thesson Prime lost 30% of its harvest that year. On the military stations of the Vorthak Empire, communication systems began experiencing strange errors. Messages were delayed. Encryption protocols failed. Coordination between fleet elements became difficult. Vorthak engineers traced the problem to the underlying software architecture. It had been written by a human programmer named David Chen, who had been contracted by the Empire 60 years ago when they were upgrading their systems. Chen had died decades ago, and his code had been running perfectly ever since. No one had ever needed to understand how it worked. Now they needed to understand it, and they could not. Chen had been brilliant, and his code was complex. Vorthak programmers spent months trying to decipher it. They made little progress. Meanwhile, their military coordination continued to degrade. The banking systems of 6 different species began experiencing what officials called minor glitches. Transactions were delayed. Accounts showed incorrect balances. Transfers between worlds sometimes disappeared entirely. Investigation revealed that the core financial protocols used by most council species had been developed by a human consortium called the Stellar Credit Union. The consortium had operated quietly for decades, maintaining the systems that move money across the galaxy. They had been efficient and reliable, and completely ignored by everyone who used their services. Now they were gone, and no one knew how to fix what they had built. Similar problems appeared everywhere. Navigation beacons went dark because humans had maintained them. Medical research stalled because humans had been running the laboratory equipment. Translation services degraded because humans had been updating the language databases. Shipping routes became dangerous because humans had been operating the fuel depots in unprofitable locations that no one else wanted to manage. The council slowly realized an uncomfortable truth. For 30 years, humans had not been important. They had not held positions of power or prestige. They had not commanded fleets or controlled governments or shaped policy. They had been small and weak and easily ignored. But they had been everywhere. They had taken the jobs no one else wanted. They had maintained the systems no one else understood. They had filled the gaps that no one else noticed. They had been the invisible foundation that held galactic civilization together, and now they were gone. The council convened an emergency session to address the crisis. Delegates blamed each other for allowing the humans to become so integrated into critical systems. They blamed the humans for leaving without providing proper transition support. They blamed everyone except themselves. High Arbiter Solon listened to the arguments with growing frustration. He had warned them. 3 months ago, when the humans announced their departure, he had tried to explain what it meant. No one had listened. Now they were experiencing the consequences, and still they did not understand. "This is not a crisis of infrastructure," Solon said when he finally spoke. "This is a crisis of assumption. We assumed the humans were unimportant because we did not see them. We assumed our civilization was self-sufficient because we did not count the hands that built it. We were wrong." The chamber fell silent. Every great civilization in galactic history has collapsed not from external conquest, but from internal rot, Solon continued. The moment a society begins taking its foundations for granted, it has already begun dying. We took the humans for granted. We took everything they built for granted. And now we are paying the price. The Vorthak ambassador snorted. "Philosophy will not fix our communication systems." "No," Solon agreed. "But understanding might prevent us from making the same mistake twice. We need to contact the humans, not to demand their return, but to understand why they left and what they truly want." The council voted to send a diplomatic mission to Earth. The delegation was led by Ambassador Kira of the Selenari, a skilled negotiator who had resolved dozens of interspecies conflicts. She was accompanied by representatives from 12 major species, all carrying offers of reconciliation and cooperation. They arrived at Earth expecting to be greeted as saviors. They were not allowed to land. The Human Defense Network politely informed them that Earth was not accepting diplomatic visits at this time. They were welcome to transmit any messages through standard communication channels. Their ships could refuel at the designated station and then depart. Ambassador Kira transmitted a formal request for a meeting with human leadership. She explained that the council recognized its mistakes and was prepared to offer full voting rights, equal representation, and seats on all major committees. The response came from President Elena Vance herself. "The council's offer is noted and appreciated," the message said. "However, Earth's decision to withdraw is final. We have no interest in returning to an organization that required 30 years of abuse before considering us worthy of basic respect. We wish the council well in addressing its current challenges. We will not be participating in those efforts." Kira tried again. She offered trade agreements, military alliances, technology sharing programs. She offered everything the humans had ever requested during their time in the council. The answer was always the same: no. "You do not understand," Elena's final message said. "We did not leave because we wanted better terms. We left because we stopped believing the council was capable of treating us fairly. That belief has not changed. No offer you make will change it. Please do not contact us again." The delegation returned to Nexus Prime in stunned silence. For the first time in 12,000 years, a species had refused the council's friendship. Not because they were weak and had no choice, not because they were strong and wanted conquest, but because they simply did not trust the council anymore. And trust, once broken, could not be repaired with offers and promises. While the council struggled with this reality, worse news arrived. The Kree swarm had begun moving. The Kree were ancient predators, a collective intelligence that consumed organic matter to fuel its expansion. They had been dormant for decades, contained by a network of monitoring stations and defensive platforms along the frontier. Those stations had been maintained by humans. The defensive platforms had been designed by humans. The early warning systems that tracked Krieg's movement had been operated by humans. All of them were now abandoned. The first sign of trouble came when 3 frontier systems went dark simultaneously. No distress signals, no warnings, just silence. Scout ships were sent to investigate. They found nothing but debris and Krieg spores. The swarm was awake, and it was hungry, and the systems designed to detect and contain it were no longer functioning. The council mobilized its fleets. Military commanders drew up defensive plans. Strategies were debated and resources were allocated. But everywhere they turned, they found holes in their defenses. Communication networks were unreliable. Supply chains were fractured. Coordination between different species militaries was difficult because the translation systems were degraded. The great military machine of the Galactic Council was discovering a terrible truth. it had never been truly self-sufficient. It had always depended on countless small contributions from countless small sources, and the largest of those sources had just walked away. High Arbiter Solon retreated to his private chambers and accessed the Meridian Intelligence Archives. He needed to know what the humans had been doing for the past 30 years. He needed to understand what they had built while everyone else ignored them. What he found kept him awake for 3 days. The humans had not been idle. They had been learning, studying, preparing. Every technology they encountered, they had analyzed and improved. Every weakness in galactic infrastructure, they had documented and understood. Every strategic position, every resource deposit, every trade route, they had mapped it all, and they had been building. Earth's official records showed 12 colony worlds. The actual number was 47. Earth's registered fleet was listed as minimal defensive capacity. The real fleet numbered over 3,000 vessels. Earth's population was dismissed as too small to matter. The true population had reached 28 billion through careful expansion into systems that no one else wanted. For 30 years, while the Council ignored them, the humans had built an empire. Solon stared at the data for a long time. Then he noticed something else, something the intelligence analysts had missed. The human fleet was positioned defensively. Their colonies were in strategically worthless space. Their technology was designed for protection, not conquest. Their expansion had been careful to avoid any territory that Council species might claim. They had not built an empire to dominate. They had built it because they stopped trusting anyone else to protect them. Solon closed his eyes and felt the weight of 2,000 years pressing down on him. The humans were not the enemy. They had never been the enemy. They were simply a species that had learned, through bitter experience, that they could only rely on themselves. And the Council had taught them that lesson. Now the Cricks were coming, and the galaxy was falling apart, and the one species that might have held it all together had no reason to help. Solon began composing a message to Earth. Not a demand, not an offer, just a question. What would it take? He did not expect an answer, but he had to try. 8 months after the humans withdrew, the galaxy was burning. The Crick swarm had consumed 47 worlds, not frontier outposts or minor colonies, but developed planets with millions of inhabitants. The creatures moved faster than anyone had predicted, their dormancy having allowed them to build up reserves of energy that now fueled their relentless expansion. Council fleets fought desperately to contain them. Great warships from the Vorthak Empire clashed with Crick's bioforms in battles that lasted days. Selenari carriers deployed fighters by the thousands. The San defense platforms fired until their weapons melted from overuse. It was not enough. The military coordination problems that had begun as minor inconveniences had grown into critical failures. Fleet commanders could not communicate reliably with each other. Supply ships arrived at the wrong locations or not at all. Medical vessels were understaffed and undersupplied. Ammunition reserves were depleted because the manufacturing facilities depended on supply chains that no longer functioned. The great military machine of the Galactic Council was discovering that warfare was not just about weapons and warriors. It was about logistics, communication, coordination, infrastructure, all the boring, unglamorous systems that no one noticed until they stopped working. And so many of those systems had been built and maintained by humans. On Nexus Prime, the Council chamber had become a scene of constant crisis. Emergency sessions ran day and night. Delegates screamed at each other, blaming rival species for the failures. Ancient alliances crumbled as governments began withdrawing forces to protect their own homeworlds. The Thessan Confederacy announced it was pulling its fleet back to defend Thessan Prime. The Selenari followed within days. Even the proud Vorthak began consolidating their forces, abandoning frontier systems to focus on their core territories. The Council was fragmenting. High Arbiter Solon watched it happen with a heavy heart. He had spent 2,000 years trying to hold this civilization together. Now it was falling apart, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. His message to Earth had received no response. Other species had begun sending their own diplomatic missions to the human territories. The Meridians sent their most respected elder. The Thessans sent their greatest diplomat. The Vorthak, swallowing their pride, sent a formal apology for decades of insults and discrimination. All of them received the same answer. Earth's decision was final. The humans did not want revenge. They did not want to watch the galaxy burn. They simply did not trust the Council anymore, and no words could restore that trust. But Solon refused to give up. He traveled to Earth personally, something he had not done in 500 years. His ancient ship crossed the empty space between Council territory and human space, passing through regions that had once been busy with traffic and were now silent and dark. When he arrived at the human border, he transmitted a simple message. I am High Arbiter Solon of the Meridian. I do not come as a representative of the Council. I come as an individual who wishes to understand. Will you speak with me? For 3 days, there was no response. Then a small human shuttle approached his ship. A young officer appeared on his communication screen. President Vance will see you, the officer said. Please follow us. Solon followed the shuttle to Earth itself. He had never visited the human homeworld before. Few Council species had. Earth was considered a backwater, a minor planet in an unremarkable system. Not worth the travel time. Now, as his ship descended through the atmosphere, Solon realized how wrong they had all been. The planet was beautiful, blue oceans and green continents and white clouds that swirled in patterns of endless complexity. Cities glittered along the coastlines, their architecture a blend of ancient tradition and advanced technology. In orbit, thousands of ships moved in careful coordination, freighters and transports and defense vessels, all part of a system that hummed with quiet efficiency. This was not a backwater. This was a civilization that had been building itself while everyone else looked away. President Elena Vance met him in a simple garden outside the capital city. She was older than when he had last seen her hair now fully white, but her eyes were still sharp and clear. High Arbiter, she said, I did not expect you to come yourself. I did not expect to be here, Solon admitted, but I have learned that important conversations require personal presence. Transmitted messages cannot carry the weight of genuine understanding. Elena nodded. Walk with me. They walked through the garden together, past flowers that Solon did not recognize and trees that reached toward a sky he had never seen before. The air smelled different here, cleaner, somehow, than the recycled atmosphere of space stations. You want to know why we left, Elena said. It was not a question. I want to understand, Solon replied. The Council is falling apart. The Cricks are advancing. Billions of lives are at stake, and the humans who could help have chosen to stay silent. I do not judge this choice. I simply wish to understand it. Elena stopped walking. She turned to face him. Do you know what it feels like to beg for help and receive nothing? She asked. To watch your people die while those who could save them look the other way? To submit petition after petition, year after year, knowing that no one will ever read them? Solon did not answer. There was no good answer. We believed in the Council, Elena continued. When we were first admitted, we thought we were joining something noble, a community of civilizations working together for the common good. We were naive. She began walking again. Solon followed. The first time we asked for help was during the Threshold Crisis. A plague was spreading through our colonies. We needed medical supplies, research assistance, anything. The Council told us that human health issues were not a priority. We lost 80,000 people. Solon knew this history. He had read the reports. The second time was during the Cricks incursion at Threshold 7. 12,000 civilians, trapped on a colony with no defenses. We begged for military support. The Council voted that human colonies were outside the protection zone. Everyone died. Men, women, children, families, communities, gone. Her voice remained calm, but Solon could hear the pain beneath the words. After that, we stopped asking. We started building. We decided that if no one would protect us, we would protect ourselves. If no one would help us grow, we would grow on our own. If the galaxy did not want us as partners, we would become something else. She stopped again and looked at him directly. We did not leave because we hate the Council. We left because we stopped believing in it. 30 years of evidence showed us that the Council would never treat us as equals. No treaty or promise or offer could change that fundamental truth. The only thing that changed was that we finally accepted it. Solon was silent for a long moment. And now, he asked, the Cricks are destroying worlds. Species that never harmed humanity are dying. Does that not matter? It matters, Elena said quietly. It matters more than you know. We watch the reports every day. We see the death counts. We know what is happening out there. Then why do nothing? Elena's eyes hardened. Why did the council do nothing when we were dying? Why did they watch our colonies burn and decide we were not worth saving? Where was this concern for innocent lives when the innocent lives were human? Solon had no answer. We are not monsters, Elena continued. We do not want to watch the galaxy suffer. But we also cannot forget what was done to us. We cannot pretend that everything is forgiven because now, suddenly, we are useful. The Council ignored us for 30 years. They can survive without us for a little while longer. She turned and began walking back toward the capital. I am sorry, High Arbiter. I wish I could give you a different answer. But trust, once broken, cannot be repaired with words. The Council would need to prove, through actions rather than promises, that it has truly changed. And I do not believe it has. Solon followed her in silence. When they reached the edge of the garden, Elena paused. There is something you should know, she said. We are not hiding because we fear the Crix. We are not staying neutral because we cannot fight. We have the strength to end this war tomorrow if we chose. She looked at him with an expression he could not read. We have 3,000 warships, 28 billion people, technology that surpasses anything the Council has ever seen. We could crush the Crix. We could save every world they threaten. We could be the heroes you need. Then why do you not act? Solon asked. Because we are trying to decide what kind of species we want to be, Elena replied. Do we save those who abandoned us? Do we risk our children for civilizations that would have watched us die? Do we extend mercy to those who never extended it to us? She shook her head slowly. These are not easy questions, High Arbiter. We are debating them every day. Our parliament is divided. Our people are divided. Some want to help. Some want to watch the council burn. Some want something in between. And what do you want? Solon asked. Elena was quiet for a long moment. I want to believe that we are better than what was done to us. I want to believe that our suffering has made us more compassionate, not less. I want to believe that humanity can choose mercy over revenge. She looked at the sky. But I am only one voice. The decision will be made by all of us, together. And right now, we are still deciding. Solon returned to his ship that evening. He had not received the answer he hoped for, but he had received something more valuable. He had received understanding. The humans were not refusing to help because they were cruel or selfish. They were refusing because they had been hurt so deeply that they no longer knew how to trust. They were standing at a crossroads trying to choose between the pain of the past and the possibility of the future. And that choice, Solon realized, was not something anyone else could make for them. All he could do was wait and hope that when the decision came, humanity would choose to be the species they wanted to be, rather than the species the galaxy had tried to make them. The fate of 1,000 worlds hung in the balance, and the only ones who could tip that balance were the people everyone had spent 30 years ignoring. 14 months after the withdrawal, the Galactic Council held its final emergency session. The situation had grown catastrophic. The Crix swarm had consumed 63 worlds. Council fleets were scattered and demoralized. 3 major species had withdrawn entirely, pulling back to defend their homeworlds and abandoning any pretense of cooperation. The banking systems had collapsed. Trade had stopped. Communication networks were unreliable. The great civilization that had stood for 12,000 years was crumbling. And now the Crick were moving toward Nexus Prime itself. The Council voted unanimously to request human assistance. The delegation that traveled to Earth was the largest in galactic history. Representatives from 112 species, carrying an offer that would have been unthinkable a year ago. Full voting rights, equal representation, seats on all major committees, veto power on military decisions, and a formal apology from every species that had ever mistreated humanity. Everything the humans had asked for over 30 years, offered now in desperation. President Eleanor Vance received them in the Grand Hall of the Coalition Parliament. The building was new, constructed during the years of quiet expansion, and it was designed to make a statement. The ceiling was high and open, letting in natural light. The walls were covered with images from human history, moments of triumph and tragedy, war and peace, suffering and survival. The delegates noticed with some discomfort that several of the images showed council species. The Vorthak fleet that had destroyed a human transport, the Selenari delegation that had walked out of negotiations, the council chamber on the day when Threshold Seven's plea for help was denied. The humans had not forgotten. Ambassador Kira of the Selenari stepped forward to present the council's offer. She was nervous. Everyone was nervous. The fate of 1,000 worlds depended on what happened in this room. President Vance, she began, on behalf of the Galactic Council and all its member species, I offer our deepest apologies for the wrongs committed against humanity. We were blind to your contributions. We were deaf to your pleas. We failed you in ways that cannot be undone. She took a deep breath. We come now not to demand or negotiate, but to ask for mercy. The cricks are coming. Our worlds are burning. Our people are dying. We have no right to request your help, but we request it nonetheless. Please, save us. The hall was silent. Elena sat in her chair and looked at the delegation. 112 species, representing trillions of lives, all waiting for her answer. Behind her sat the Coalition Parliament, 300 human representatives from Earth and the colonies. They had been debating this moment for months. The arguments had been fierce. Families had been divided. Friendships had been tested. The question of whether to help the Council had torn at the fabric of human society, but they had reached a decision. Elena stood. Ambassador Kira, she said, I have a question for you. Not about treaties or votes or seats on committees. A simple question. Kira nodded. Where was this apology when we were dying? Where was this humility when we begged for help? Where were these offers of equality when we submitted 4,000 petitions over 30 years, asking only to be treated as partners rather than servants? Kira had no answer. The Council ignored us when we were weak, Elena continued. Now that we are strong, suddenly we are worthy of respect. Suddenly our help is valuable. Suddenly our lives matter. She walked forward until she was standing directly in front of the delegation. I could refuse you. I could watch your worlds burn and tell myself you deserve it. I could give you exactly what you gave us. Nothing. The delegation was frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Some of my people want me to do exactly that. They remember Threshold 7. They remember the Kepler researchers. They remember every petition denied, every insult endured, every human life that was sacrificed because the Council decided we were not important enough to save. She paused. But we are not having this debate because of what the Council did. We are having it because of who we choose to be. Elena turned and walked back to the Parliament. For 14 months, we have asked ourselves a question. Do we repay cruelty with cruelty? Do we become what we hated? Do we prove that we are no different from those who hurt us? She looked at the representatives behind her. Or do we choose a different path? Do we show that humanity learns something from our suffering? Do we prove that being hurt does not require us to hurt others? The Parliament members nodded. They had already voted. The decision had been made. Elena turned back to the delegation. The Coalition Parliament has voted to assist the Galactic Council in its war against the Crick. A wave of relief passed through the delegation. Several representatives began to weep. Others collapsed into their seats, overwhelmed by the release of tension. But we have conditions, Elena continued, not conditions about treaties or votes. Those things are politics. Our conditions are about principle. She raised her hand. First, we will not accept your apology. An apology given under duress means nothing. If the Council wishes to apologize, it must do so after we have saved you, when refusing would cost you nothing. Only then will we know if you truly mean it. The delegation nodded. Second, we will not accept your offers of equality. We do not want seats on the Council. We do not want voting rights or committee positions. We want nothing from the organization that failed us for 30 years. Confusion spread through the delegation. If not for political gain, why help? Third, we will not demand payment or reward. No reparations, no tribute, no territorial concessions. We will ask for nothing in return for what we are about to do. Now the confusion deepened into suspicion. What were the humans planning? We will help you, Elena said. Not because we owe you, or because you owe us, or because we expect anything in return. We will help you because it is right, because the innocent should not die for the sins of their leaders. Because mercy is not weakness. It is the strongest choice anyone can make. She walked back to her seat. Humanity was ignored and dismissed and abandoned by the Council for 30 years. We could have become bitter and vengeful. We could have built our empire for conquest and waited for the moment to strike. We could have been exactly what you feared we might be. She sat down. Instead, we chose to be something else. We chose to remember our suffering not as a reason to cause suffering, but as a reminder of why suffering is wrong. We chose to believe that the galaxy can be better than it has been. We chose hope over revenge. Elena pressed a button on her chair. The human fleet is mobilizing now. 3,000 ships will arrive at Nexus Prime within 6 days. They will engage the Creeks and drive them back. They will protect your worlds and rescue your people and end this war. The delegation was stunned into silence. And when it is over, Elena said, we will go home. We will return to our space and continue building the civilization we started. We will not demand gratitude. We will not expect friendship. We will simply know that we did the right thing, even for those who never did the right thing for us. She stood one last time. That is who humanity is. That is who we choose to be. Not conquerors, not avengers, not victims waiting to become oppressors, just people who believe that mercy matters, even when it is difficult, especially when it is difficult. She looked at the delegation with something that might have been pity. We are going to save you, not because you deserve it, but because we do. The delegation filed out of the Grand Hall in a daze. They had come expecting negotiations. They had come with offers and conditions and backup plans. They had not expected to receive unconditional help. They had not expected mercy. It was, some of them realized, more unsettling than rejection. Because rejection would have been understandable. Rejection would have been fair. They had wronged the humans, and being refused help would have been appropriate punishment. But mercy? Mercy meant the humans were choosing to be better than the Council had been. Mercy meant the humans were proving, through action rather than words, that they were not what the Council had assumed. Mercy meant the Council had been wrong about humanity in every way that mattered, and that realization was harder to accept than any punishment. In the Parliament chamber, after the delegation left, Elena Vance sat alone in the silence. She thought about Threshold 7, 12,000 people who had died waiting for help that never came. She thought about the Kepler researchers, working themselves to death in underfunded laboratories. She thought about her grandmother, who had been on one of the first ships to Council space, full of hope for the future that humanity would build among the stars. Her grandmother had died disappointed. Elena hoped she would have been proud of what happened today. The fleet was launching. 3,000 ships carrying 400,000 human soldiers, sailors, pilots, and support personnel. All of them volunteers. All of them knowing they might not come back. They were going to save the same civilizations that had abandoned them. Some called it foolish. Some called it naive. Some called it the ultimate form of surrender, giving your enemies exactly what they wanted. Elena called it the most powerful thing humanity could do, because conquest could be resisted, revenge could be survived. But mercy changed everything. Mercy rewrote the story. Mercy proved that strength did not require cruelty, that power did not require abuse, that the strong could choose to lift up the weak rather than crush them. Mercy was the hardest choice humanity had ever made, and it would change the galaxy forever. The Battle of Nexus Prime began on a Tuesday. The Crick swarm arrived as a cloud of biological ships, millions of individual organisms linked together by a hive mind that had been hunting across the stars for 10,000 years. They came from the void like a plague, darkening the stars with their numbers, their collective hunger driving them toward the greatest concentration of organic life in the known galaxy. Nexus Prime was not just the capital of the Council. It was home to 12 billion beings from hundreds of species. Refugees had been flooding in for months, fleeing consumed worlds, hoping that the center of galactic civilization would be safe. It would not be safe. The Council fleet was broken and scattered. The defense platforms were unmanned. The communication networks were still failing. When the Cricks arrived, there would be nothing to stop them. And then the human fleet appeared. 3,000 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They arrived in a sphere around Nexus Prime, their hulls gleaming in the light of the station's artificial sun. Each ship was smaller than its Council equivalents, but they moved with a coordination that no Council fleet had ever achieved. They were not just ships. They were a single organism, every part connected to every other part, every movement planned and executed with absolute precision. Admiral James Chen commanded the fleet from his flagship, the UCS Threshold. The name had been chosen deliberately. Every human knew what threshold meant. Every human remembered. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer announced. Chen looked at the sensor display. The Crick swarm was 2 hours away. Hundreds of millions of bioforms, each one a weapon, each one driven by the relentless hunger of the hive. "Launch the first wave," Chen said. 1,000 human fighters erupted from the fleet. They did not charge at the swarm. They spread out in precise patterns, dropping sensor beacons and communication relays, building a network of information that would let the fleet track every movement of the enemy. The Council species watching from Nexus Prime did not understand what they were seeing. "What are they doing?" the Selenari Admiral asked. "They should be attacking. Every moment they wait, the Cricks get closer." High Arbiter Solon watched the human ships with ancient eyes. He had studied human warfare during his investigations. He knew what they were building. "They are not fighting the way we fight," he said quietly. "They are not trying to destroy the enemy. They are trying to understand it." The Cricks reached the outer perimeter. The swarm split into smaller groups, probing the human defenses, looking for weaknesses. The human fleet responded by shifting formation, presenting different angles, testing the Cricks' reactions. It was like watching a dance or a conversation. Two intelligences feeling each other out, each trying to understand the other. Then the human fleet began to move. They did not charge. They did not form battle lines. They flowed like water around stones, like wind through leaves. The Cricks tried to engage them directly, but the humans were never where they expected. Ships appeared from unexpected angles, fired precise bursts, and vanished before the Cricks could respond. The swarm tried to adapt. The hive mind shifted tactics, sending faster bioforms to intercept the human ships. But the humans anticipated every move. Their information network told them everything. Their coordination let them respond instantly. They were always one step ahead. Admiral Chen watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. The Cricks were confused. Their usual tactics relied on overwhelming numbers and relentless aggression. They had never faced an enemy that refused to engage directly, that treated warfare as a puzzle to be solved rather than a test of strength to be won. "Begin phase 2, Chen ordered. The human fleet changed formation again. This time, they did not simply avoid the Cricks. They herded them. Gentle pressure from multiple directions, pushing the swarm away from Nexus Prime, guiding it toward a specific location. The Council observers could not believe what they were seeing. They are not trying to kill them, the Vorthak general realized. They are moving them. It took 6 hours. 6 hours of constant maneuvering, constant pressure, constant adjustment. The human fleet never stopped moving. Every ship knew its role. Every pilot executed their part of the plan with perfect precision. When it was over, the Crick swarm had been pushed into a dead zone, a region of space with no planets, no resources, no reason to stay. And then the human ships surrounded them, not to attack, to contain. Admiral Chen opened a communication channel, not to the Council, not to his own ships, to the Cricks. The hive mind did not speak in words. It communicated through patterns of electromagnetic radiation, pulses of energy that conveyed meaning without language. The humans had spent 30 years studying these patterns. They had learned to interpret them. Now they used that knowledge. Chen transmitted a message, simple concepts, carefully constructed to be understood by an alien intelligence. "We are not your enemy. We know why you are hungry. We know what happened to your feeding grounds. We can help." The Crick swarm went still. For thousands of years, the hive mind had known only hunger and resistance. Every species it encountered either fled or fought. None had ever tried to communicate. None had ever offered anything except violence. The humans offered understanding. Your original feeding grounds were destroyed in a war 10,000 years ago. The Council species do not remember this war. They do not know that they created your hunger. But we know. We found the records. We understand. The Cricks responded. Confusion, suspicion, but also something else. Something that might have been hope. We will not destroy you. We will not contain you forever. We will help you find new feeding grounds, systems with no intelligent life, resources that no one else needs, places where you can live without conflict. The communication continued for 3 days. In the end, the Cricks agreed. The war was over. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. The humans had not only defeated the Cricks, they had solved the problem. They had discovered the ancient cause of the swarm's hunger and addressed it directly. They had offered mercy to a species that had consumed billions of lives. And it had worked. The Council called for a formal ceremony to honor the human fleet. Representatives from every species gathered on Nexus Prime to offer their gratitude, their praise, their promises of eternal friendship. President Elena Vance declined to attend. Instead, she sent a message. Humanity did not save the Council to receive honors. We saved you because it was right. We will now return to our space and continue building our own civilization. We wish you well. The Council was shocked. After everything the humans had done, they wanted nothing? High Arbiter Solon understood. He traveled to Earth one final time. Elena met him in the same garden where they had talked before. The flowers were different now. Autumn had come, and the trees were changing color. Why? Solon asked. You could have asked for anything. After what you did, the Council would have given you whatever you demanded. Elena smiled sadly. And that is exactly why we asked for nothing. She walked to a bench and sat down. Solon joined her. If we had demanded rewards, we would have proven that we helped you for selfish reasons. The Council would have paid us and felt no gratitude. They would have told themselves that humans were just like everyone else. Self-interested, transactional, predictable. She looked at the changing leaves. By asking for nothing, we forced them to confront an uncomfortable truth. We helped them because it was right. Not because we expected payment, not because we wanted power, just because mercy is valuable in itself. She turned to face him. The Council spent 30 years believing that humanity was unimportant, small, weak, not worth considering. Now they will spend the next 1,000 years wondering if they were wrong about everything. Solon was quiet for a long moment. What will humanity do now? He asked. Build, Elena said simply. The same thing we have always done. We will expand into new systems. We will develop new technologies. We will grow our civilization. And we will be here if anyone needs us. Not as Council members? No. The Council was built on hierarchy, strong species dominating weak ones. We want something different, a network of equals, partnerships based on mutual respect rather than power. If any species wants to work with us on those terms, they are welcome. But we will not join an organization that spent 30 years treating us as servants. Solon nodded slowly. You are building a new order. We are offering an alternative, Elena corrected. Whether anyone accepts it is their choice. A year later, the first new station was completed. It hung in space at the intersection of human territory and Council space. It was different from Council stations. Simpler, more open, designed for collaboration rather than hierarchy. The plaque at its entrance read, built not by the strong for the weak, but by all for all. Human engineers worked alongside Thessan architects. Selenary scientists collaborated with Meridian philosophers. Even Vorthak laborers contributed, their pride set aside in recognition of what the humans had taught them. Not every species joined. Many remained committed to the Council and its traditional structures. But slowly, steadily, more species began to seek partnership with humanity. Not because humans were powerful, though they were. Not because humans were useful, though they were that too. Because humans had shown them something different. They had shown that strength did not require cruelty, that power could be used to build rather than destroy, that mercy was not weakness but the highest form of strength. They had shown that a species could be hurt, ignored, abandoned, and dismissed, and still choose to be kind. High Arbiter Solon lived for another 300 years. In his final writings, he reflected on the transformation he had witnessed. For 12,000 years, the Galactic Council believed that civilization was built on power. The strong dominated the weak, the powerful controlled the powerless. This was the natural order, and we never questioned it. Then the humans came, small and weak and easily ignored. We dismissed them. We denied them. We abandoned them when they needed us most. And when they finally had the power to destroy us, they chose mercy instead. They taught us that civilization is not built on power. It is built on choice. The choice to help rather than harm. The choice to build rather than destroy. The choice to offer mercy to those who never offered it to you. The galaxy had spent centuries asking what humanity could offer. We expected resources or technology or military strength. We never expected the answer. They offered us a chance to be better than we were. And that, in the end, was the greatest gift of all.